guess is that once people, if the world did start to do it and there weren't any obvious bad effects, probably it would become more of a normalized part of climate policy and less of a high-profile thing. It would just become part of the woodwork. I'm quite serious when I say what we need to do is to have a much broader research program with many more people in it to try and break some of the groupthink, and I truly don't have a strong opinion about what the right answer is.
Okay.
So, in terms of solid, so first of all, I don't think, solid particles are, I think, a thing really worth exploring because it looks like they could produce some better results with less risk. But does that mean that I would discount marine cloud brightening? No, I take that seriously too. And among solid particles, we've spent almost no effort right now being serious about optimizing. What we've tried to do is, at least for the first time, think hard about how solid particles would interact with the real background stratosphere. And to, the one thing I think I've done the last little while is try and get people to think hard about the consequences of the warming the lower stratosphere, so that you might want to have particles that weren't so absorptive.
Okay, that's good. I mean, you mentioned the diamonds last night in the panel.
Yeah.
And I think it's a word that's easily digestible by someone outside.
So diamond is one of a handful of things. I mean, so if you just do some kind of quick screen, you want things that are earth abundant, that have a high Highness refraction, and that are infrared transmissive, don't absorb, and that seem to have good biological, a limited toxicity. And so there are actually a bunch of papers on nanodiamond toxicity, and they suggest that it's very low and very safe. I'm not an expert, I haven't read it carefully, but at least like sort of first order, it passes that screen, where lots of things wouldn't, right? Like if you found that, some heavy metal was a good geoengineering compound, you obviously would not even think about it because of the health impact. So the reasons to think that for example, diamond might be good in that regard, but the question is, can you manufacture half-micron diamonds at a reasonable price? I really have no idea. So after 10 years of the kind of ramp that I was talking about, you'd want 10,000 tons a year or some number like that.
Okay.
Tens of thousands.
That seems quite small.
Yeah, well, they're pretty efficient scatterers. Yeah, maybe it's 20. I haven't done the math in my head. It depends on how quick the ramp is.
I was expecting you to say something in the
No. I mean, we're getting about half a watt per square meter for globally for 1 million tons a year. So in the millions would be, more than a watt per square meter. I don't think we want to do that right away. I mean, the delivery method would be figured out by a bunch of engineers who sharpened their pencils and did the work. And from what from the study that we did, it looks to me like aircraft are, substantially. Pardon?
It's a proposal. One option could be.
I think we're a long way from even making. Proposal to whom? We're doing science, and we're doing engineering, and we're thinking about ways that we could reduce climate risks. But I'm not. If hybrid airships end up being cheaper, fine. I don't.
Yeah, but delivery is very important in terms of.
No, I think delivery is really an easy part of the problem. I think all the hard problems here are social, and the other problems are environmental. No, delivery is probably the easiest and least interesting part of the entire problem. We just went to a regular commercial aircraft manufacturer. It's no big mystery, and getting materials to the lower. Even the lower tropical stratosphere is, of order of dollar a kilo kind of cost. And that means that even if you're going to do millions of tons of materials, you're talking, billions, a few billion a year. And that's tiny compared to other costs involved in climate change. So it says to me that cost of delivery is not that big a deal here. But the point is, if you go to a regular commercial aircraft manufacturer and you ask them about sort of what they think is commercial off-the-shelf things that are not pressing the envelope, getting up to 23 or so kilometers is, essentially something that looks a bit like a re-engine business jet does it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a particularly controversial fact. If you want to go significantly higher in cruise, then there's new engine development. And there are certainly lots of ways you could do that, but that gets to be a billion-dollar proposition with some technical risk. But if you're talking just the sort of 20 kilometers, let's say, then there's really no question. there have been a bunch of developments. Each one of, I mean, here's a sign that it's not that hard. There's been a series of aircraft developments recently for piloted aircraft that have all done it more or less with off-the-shelf components, and they've all the ones that have tried to succeeded.
Okay.
I felt that the UK government did a wonderful job trying to open up and try and stick its nose out and allow an experiment and talk about it, but I actually think that from what I know about the stage gate process and the whole sandbox that produced it, they really produced essentially a terrible outcome, because the very last problem we seem to have with solar geoengineering is it's too expensive. And so the idea that the first major engineering project as an outdoor thing would be designed to make it still cheaper, I thought was sort of deeply misguided. And it much more sensible would be to work on things that reduce the risk or improve the efficacy. And by having the very first thing that they were going to focus on be cheaper deployment hardware, I thought was a really very poor choice of the British scientific community. More than unnecessary, sending profoundly the wrong message to their detriment. So I think it's really too bad it happened. And I mean, I think the actual people doing it are totally well-intentioned, and the science involved in these tethers or engineering is really fun, but it's really hard to see that it's relevant to this problem. And the thermostat is not, I mean, I think that's not that helpful analogy. For one thing, there may be multiple thermostats in the sense that there's multiple, climate's a many-dimensional thing. It's not just temperature, and it's not clear that there's a single entity that would be doing the controlling. And then, unlike a thermostat, where control is easy, in this case control is much harder and inherently more noisy and uncertain. For most of the stratospheric things, it's a year or two. Avoided that. Well, no, this is this issue of what's called termination. So if you've ramped it up a long way, I think what you're committed to do is to balance, if for some reason one decides to stop, and you've got risks of the unmasked warming as you stop, and so you presumably want to ramp down in some more orderly way. I think it's absolutely vital if you're going to have, I mean, the only way to make any kind of sensible public decisions about this are to have, the discussion must be broad both in terms of the sorts of people involved, their backgrounds, but also broad in terms of broadening the topic, because you can't make sensible decisions about solar geoengineering just talking about solar geoengineering. It is intimately connected with questions about the other ways we might respond to climate, and more broadly with big questions about how we conceive of living on this planet and shaping it or being shaped by it over the next century. So you have to have those big conversations, or you won't get to any kind of crude consensus about what might be the right thing to do. Oh, just that if you do SRM, the world ends up releasing less CO2, say, from the ocean than it otherwise would have. That's all.
Is it just ocean?
No, not just ocean, land surface too, and there's other effects. But
yeah. These studies have been done.
No, nobody's done.
No, I mean, sort of, if there are papers on this. Or...
No, it shows you some of the taboos involved in this field. Yeah, I would, I mean, for geoengineering, I advocate very serious research, and if the research bears out what now appears to be the facts about the potential benefits and the relative smallness of the risks, then I would support, under those conditions, some kind of slow ramp deployment of the kind we've written about, yes.